Coming up, Brexit was not an event, it set a course of action. A course that's already being corrected, even under the last knockings of this extreme Brexity government. Because the alternative is a slow-motion car crash of the British economy in the name of a dogma believed in by an ever-shrinking proportion of the electorate, as opinions have radically changed, and on top of that, the elderly demographic of the Brexit voter has seen a literal dying out of support since 2016. Prime Minister Sunak is caught between two stools, a political necessity to pretend that Hard Brexit has been a great success, but also the economic reality of the massive costs incurred by leaving the single market and the customs union. He can only get away with this deceitful stance because the parliamentary opposition, if you can call it that, is also paying lip service to similar doublethink on Europe, calling for closer proximity to the EU whilst denying they want substantial reintegration. But now, the solids have hit the air conditioning with the publication of a radical blueprint from senior European politicians from France and Germany for the future of the European Union's structure, which appears purpose-built to make it easier for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party to commit the UK to associate membership of the EU in their first term in power. Stay tuned. I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button, subscribe, and above all, share a link to this video with your social media contacts. France and Germany have published proposals for an inner circle of countries willing to sign up to more radical integration in a structure which also features a new outer tier of EU membership, which they specifically state could include the UK. The Franco-German plan suggests a breakaway inner circle at the heart of a differentiated European membership structure. This group would be fully signed up to integration on defence, foreign policy and security, giving up their national vetoes over Brussels' budget contributions and taxation, as well as defence, security and foreign policy. Members of this accelerated group are likely to include France, Germany, Italy, Spain and the Netherlands. A second tier would then be the rump of current EU members who are unwilling to sign up to this accelerated integration and are allowed to opt out of it, but will not be allowed to opt out from the existing Lisbon Treaty or so-called EU values, things like democracy, a free press, non-discrimination on the grounds of race, sex, sexual orientation, disability and so on. The plan then goes on to describe the creation of a wider grouping, a new associate outer tier, which is proposed for the UK alongside Switzerland and for Norway. The paper says, associate members would not be bound to ever closer union, meaning countries that didn't want to fully join the EU could choose a permanent, frictionless trade relationship rather than future integration. The paper also suggested the core area of participation would be the single market, adding, countries would join out of their own political will, either because they withdraw from the EU, hint hint UK, or because they have no intention of joining in the first place. A fourth and final tier would be the existing European Political Community, the EPC, which Britain joined when it was first established in October 2022 after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This fourth tier has a focus on geopolitical convergence and political cooperation in areas such as climate policy. Now, the timing of this proposal actually has nothing to do with Brexit, but has everything to do with talks scheduled for this autumn, where EU leaders will be discussing deeper integration, streamlined decision-making, and an expansion eastwards to include Ukraine and the Western Balkan countries by 2030. The new membership structure proposal was said by Anna Lerman, Germany's Europe Minister, to be a valuable contribution to the debate on the future of the EU. It's clear that EU enlargement and EU reform go hand in hand, and we need to begin with this now. Emmanuel Macron is also a strong supporter of the proposal, and sources say that he hopes it will appeal to a future Labour government. This proved quite an embarrassment to Starmer on his recent visit to see Macron in Paris, with Starmer's team quick to shoot down the idea, describing it as a non-starter and saying that any government he led would not consider a deal that involved any form of EU membership. Not really surprising, as Starmer has already ruled out joining the single market or the customs union and has pledged to make Brexit work. Although, if you put any value whatsoever on a Starmer pledge, then I fear you've not been paying attention for the last 4 years. But to be fair, he knows that if he showed any interest at all in associate EU membership, he'd be opening up Labour to accusations that he was intent on undoing Brexit and taking Britain back into the European Union. And the authors of the new structure understand that, which is why the tiered plan looks as though it was designed with a future Labour government in mind, generating pressure on Starmer inside his party to go for this new associate member option. One EU diplomat said this out loud, remarking, "It is carefully balanced politically to be a potential place for Britain without the need to ever rejoin the EU or to hold a referendum." And despite Starmer's public pledges, once the Labour Party comes to power, it's likely that the idea will be considered. A massive majority of Labour members, and most of Starmer's shadow cabinet come to that, are in favour of exactly the sort of associate membership being offered by the Franco-German plan. And look, politically, it would be risky to say so openly right now. Sure, according to the polls, a majority of the electorate do now want to rejoin the EU. But to be fair, Labour want to focus on the Tories' abysmal record over the last 13 years and don't want the next election to be all about Brexit yet again. But privately, Starmer and his posse must certainly realise that the current situation is unsustainable in the longer term, and that, at the least, Britain needs a closer relationship with its biggest trading partner, free of non-tariff barriers and freedom of movement for goods, services, capital and people. All those things that even the Leave campaign deceitfully promised we'd still have after Brexit.
Absolutely nobody is talking about threatening our place in the single market. Norway, Switzerland, all of these countries have complete free trade with the EU. And by the way, I can't help noticing that they're doing pretty well. But to repeat, absolutely nobody is talking about threatening our place in the single market.
Because only a madman would actually leave the market.
We have a great independent future, just as countries like Norway and Switzerland enjoy.
We'll find ourselves part of the European Economic Area and with a free trade deal.
Well, actually, Norway, Iceland and Switzerland do pretty well.
So expect Labour and Starmer to keep stum for now, but if and when Labour wins a large majority, expect Labour's caution to evaporate. And when that happens, the new tiered membership proposal suddenly looks extremely attractive. Starmer could point out that the UK could get all the economic advantages of the single market, plus a seat at the table in the new, more flexible membership arrangements for the bloc. In effect, Britain would move from the current Tier 4 membership to Tier 3, using the nomenclature of the proposal. Now, in my opinion, the best deal for Britain would of course be right at the heart of the EU in the accelerated core group, but I appreciate that that won't necessarily be a view shared by even some of the pro-EU lobby. But I'll take a move from Tier 4 to Tier 3 as a very positive first step. Tier 3 would entail many positives. An end to non-tariff barriers and red tape, an end to the Brexit pressures on the ports, and a restoration of our rights to live, study and work freely across the EU. That freedom of movement would also provide Labour-strapped sectors of industry the chance to access willing EU workers again. It would reduce queues for travellers and would make it easier to reach agreements with our partners on processing refugees. I think the EU are playing a blinder here with this proposal, which will, I'm sure, prove very attractive to a future Labour government. And although there's a long way to go before it's ratified by all 27 member countries, the new structure addresses the stated concerns of the Brexit cult, the sovereignty / take back control rhetoric. But it also offers a pathway to full integration into the customs union and single market. Cue the usual suspects out there, the dissenting voices quoting chapter and verse about why this could never happen because of current treaties. But it's clear that those existing treaties are going to have to be drastically amended to facilitate the eastward expansion targeted for 2030. And the Franco-German proposal for this new tiered membership structure goes hand in hand with this autumn's EU summit on deeper integration and the streamlining of the EU decision-making processes. Now, this is uncharacteristically optimistic of me, I know, but I really think that we can now see a vision of the future, with this new proposal being designed to offer the UK a feasible pathway back into Europe, with the first step being the UK shifting from Tier 4 to Tier 3 under the proposed new structure, maybe as early as the first term of a Labour government. And who knows beyond that? Maybe moving to Tier 2 in my lifetime, as the dwindling band of Brexit apologists and cult members amongst the electorate are replaced by the younger generations. According to the Full Fact fact-checking website, 73% of voters under the age of 24 voted to remain, and current polling shows that more than 80% of those reaching voting age after the referendum would vote to rejoin the EU in a second referendum. Demographics and democracy insist that Brexit must die. Its passing will not be mourned.
Welcome to the Brexit, sir. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.